Okay, so let's get moving on the move on here. This is a fun presentation. This is usually better for beginner investors, folks that just getting their start, who I think are really susceptible to a lot of the snake oil and hustle bro stuff. So this is a good breakdown of what we're looking at when we start buying a property. So my name is Erik Boltman. I co-own Real Property Management with my lovely wife, Kassandra Taggart, who actually will not be here. She's down in Dallas at our national conference. I also want to throw out a big shout out to Willie, who is our producer, who has taken my god-awful all-white slides and made them much better to look at. So big shout out to Willie. Thank you for your help. Okay, so first thing we need to talk about is I want to inoculate you against Guru. There are no magic bullets. There is no super secret real estate system that you're going to learn online. Yes, you can learn a bunch of stuff online. Yes, you should be going to bigger pockets. Absorb as much information as possible, but do not be susceptible to all that. What you got to do is you got to get out there and you got to hustle and you got to do this. And there's a lot of folks that talk a really big game, but in reality, buying properties, investing in properties is going to take some experience, and you need to learn from people who have actual experience doing that. You also need to have people surrounding you that are helping you, but there's not some super secret class that you're going to be able to take, pay a bunch of money for, and all of a sudden you're going to know what you're doing. Okay. We also need to talk about there's no unicorn properties. Every property is going to have trade-offs. You're not going to be able to buy a property on no or low down government loan. Oh, and it's also move-in ready, requires no repairs. Oh, and I'm going to live in one of the units for free, but I'm going to pay other people to do all the hard stuff. And I'm never going to pay a dime towards my mortgage because my tenants are going to do all that for me. Oh, and also I want a cash flow per 200 per door. Everything is going to have trade-offs. Everything. What you need to look at is those trade-offs and say, do these trade-offs work for me, my situation, my finances, my amount of work I'm willing to commit to the property? So first thing we're going to talk about is types of properties. We need to kind of understand our language. So when I say type A, type B, type C, you kind of know generally what I'm talking about and what are the pros and cons of those properties. So first off, we're going to start with A class, right? These are the big boys. These are the big expensive homes, right? Usually when we start talking about A class, we're talking about on a single family home, probably greater than 2,000 square feet, talking high dollar prices to purchase. Sometimes you'll see this with upper end condos, but man, location when it comes to those upper end condos. Okay, it is very hard to make an A class condo, but you will know it when you see it. You'll probably know it real well when you see the price. These tend to be newer construction, big renovations. Like when you are marketing a home for upwards of $3,000 a month in today's market, people expect perfection or near perfection. Okay, these are high dollar clients with high dollar expectations. Yes, you will get very, very large rent amounts for these properties. The tenant retention is typically really good. You're going to see very long leases based on what we've seen. When somebody spends the time, money, and effort to move into a 2,800 square foot home, they're not going to move soon. Very typical customer is someone who's making, married couple making a lot of money, and they don't see themselves living in that area. But let's say it's a surgeon and he's doing, a couple years in your area, and it's not really worth it for him to buy a home there. These are typically one unit or more. I personally have never seen a multifamily A class. Perhaps they exist. I've never seen one. When we get these properties as property managers, usually they were not purchased with the intent of being an income property. It's typically someone who, I used to live there. I'm going to go, let's say the surgeon lived there. He owns that home. He's going to go down and do his 2 years in wherever, he's going to go to Africa and go do some charitable work. He just wants to know the home is taken care of. One of the first conversations we have with people who have A-class homes is, our job is not to make you money on an A-class, our job is to protect the asset. Because the rent amounts on these properties, yes, they're high, but they pale in comparison to the overall value. So the big thing on A-class is screening the tenants, because there's just so much more damage that can be done. No, I'm going to generally talk you out of A-class properties because they are what I call the canary in the coal mine. A-class properties as we've been in this business for 12 years, we study rent prices very, very carefully. When economic downturns happen, the first place you will see it is in the A-class properties. This is another reason why I'm going to try and talk you out of buying any A-class property as a rental. They are high risk, in my opinion, low reward relative to the capital investment, and they tend to be the first hit. Smart people make lots of money, generally speaking. Smart people make smart decisions, which is why they make more money. They are going to see an economic downturn before you will. The perfect example was my showing agent came into the office and he goes, "You're not going to believe this. I just did a showing with 2 PhDs at a townhome in Midtown Anchorage." And so he was very curious about this. So he starts asking them questions. They had just come from watching about half their friends get laid off at the oil company they worked at. Because they were smart, they knew, time to put my home on the market now. So what we saw was then a flood of A-class hit the market from people who'd lost their jobs, people who knew they were about to or thought they were about to. And what that did is it oversaturated the market. And when you suddenly had an increase in supply to an already low demand, and that depressed prices quite a bit. So what are the pros of A-class? They're newer, located in desirable areas. You're dealing with really nice people, smart people, educated people. The tenants are easy to work with. They have credit scores. They'd like to keep them high. They have a kind of a natural appeal to them. However, I think the cons vastly outweigh the pros in A-class, the initial cost of purchase being the big one. They're just too dang expensive for what you're getting out of it. Like we talked about, you're going to be the first to feel the economic downturns. And you'd think, well, but they're rich. These are typically high income earner employees. You're probably not renting your home to someone who is immune to economic downturns. And the people who live there are going to have extremely high demand. They are not going to put up with minor flaws, which really raises your turn costs when you're dealing with these. So overall, Erik's opinion, don't invest in A-class. Moving on. Let's talk about B-class. This is my favorite. I personally invest in B-class. I do some in C-class, but I have learned over the long run that in economic downturns, in economic upswings, the middle class is always here. Small families will always exist. Small families who want a safe place to live. Does that mean they can't be multifamily? No, they can be multifamily. Typically, though, we're looking at condos, townhomes, duplexes, middle-income single-family homes, and some fourplexes, but your fourplex better be in a very nice neighborhood, better be very well taken care of, and you're going to see typically like middle-income single people, that young lieutenant, or he's making decent money. He wants to live in a nice neighborhood, but he doesn't want to live in like kind of a lower income apartment. So you will still see a little bit of that. These are working and middle class neighborhoods. As I like to say, these are ladder rack neighborhoods. I'd like to see at least one garage stall before I start calling it a B class. Yes, there's exceptions. Really, really nice condos that maybe have a carport, I think still qualify. Generally speaking, I'd like to see, at least in the colder states, at least one place that they can park a garage or park a car inside. Like I talked about ladder racks. When I talk about ladder racks, everybody knows them when they see them. It's those racks that sit on a work truck so you can put ladders and long stretches of pipe, plywood, 2x4s, etc. We're looking for, when I'm hunting neighborhoods, I want to see ladder racks because the those are the middle class that when economic downturns happen, you still need your house fixed, you still need electrical, you still need internet, you still need plumbing. Um, People who work in the trades tend to have very, very, very stable positions because no matter how bad it gets, a society's not gonna function for very long without running water. Your plumber's still gonna have a job. Lastly, washer and dryer, very likely. It's you would be hard pressed to sell me that this is a B class unit if you don't have washer dryer in unit. Like really hard. Like I better hear a really good reason why your fourplex with coin op is B class because I doubt it. Okay, so what are the pros? Like I said, much better insulated from economic downturns. They're not going to pencil out as good. Okay, for you spreadsheet nerds, you know who I'm talking to. You guys with engineering degrees, they're not going to pencil out. Okay, we're going to talk more about that. Why I still like these. These are here's one reason why it's going to pencil out is because the good tenants, the ones that actually care what their credit score is, the ones who would care if they trashed your place and you sent them to collections and destroyed their credit, because guess what? This is probably somewhere where they're living right before they buy their first home. That's who you want as tenants. Oh, but Erik, I'm going to lose the tenants. You're right. They're also going to reliably pay their rent and probably take care of your place for the next 36 months while they save up to buy the home. What we see we did a study a few years back, and we saw somewhere between a 70 and 75% rate of lease renewals. When we'll talk about C class in a second, when you get into C class, that plummets, and you need to understand how much turnover really hurts you, because that is not only opportunity cost, but the cost of turning the unit. And if you're hiring a good-looking and humble guy like me, we're going to be charging every time you turn that property, right? Now, that's more work for me. I'd rather see you just stay rented. These are easy properties to cut your teeth on. However, it is an easy property for a VA and FHA loans require you to live in them. A lot of new investors then, because they have to live there, they make very good decisions about what neighborhood they should buy in. And then they manage their own property for a couple of years, and they get to think that they, like, man, I'm the next real estate mogul, Donald Trump, Robert Kiyosaki. I really know what I'm doing. And then they get into their spreadsheet and they buy in an absolute garbage neighborhood because they're not thinking about the human factor problems because they've never had to deal with it because they owned a B class. But now they buy in a C class neighborhood and all of a sudden they have all these problems and they're going, wait, none of this was on my spreadsheet. They're just easier. You have far fewer lawsuits, you have far fewer evictions, vacancy, and stress. These people have jobs. They have better things to do than call their property manager and complain about everything. But if you've ever had that tenant who's doesn't have a job, is on some sort of assistance program, and they're sitting around at home watching cable reruns, trust me, the highlight of their day is harassing you, the landlord, because it gives them something to do. So think about that. Most B class are going to be newer construction, but that's not exclusively. Okay, here's where the spreadsheet guys get nervous about B class. Yes, fewer units. Let's say you've got a duplex and you got 1 unit vacant. Yes, you are 50% vacant. Yes, that is a risk. And they tend to be more expensive per unit. So again, it's not going to pencil out as well in the short run on your spreadsheet because you called the property manager and said, what's the vacancy rate? And he said, oh, my vacancy rate is 2% because he thought he was selling to you. When in all reality, he was lying and his is closer to 7. And then you put that 2 in your spreadsheet and you're wondering why nothing works out. Okay. A vacancy rate is not a number. There's a lot more to it. Everybody thinks it's just like, oh, I call a property manager and they give me the vacancy rate. There's a lot more to it. That could be a whole talk on its own. Okay. I like B class for long-term investment because in the long run, the lower turnover, the longer leases, the easier tenants, the fewer legal fees, just the fewer BS to deal with, in my opinion, generally means you will make more money in the long run. You are less likely to see a decline in the neighborhood, etc. Okay, last one, C class. Not my favorite. Do I own some? Yes, I do. Do I manage some? Yes, I do. Are they definitely master's level? Yes, they are. If you jump straight in and buy a C class for your first property, you're going to learn a lot really fast. Now, engineers, spreadsheet types, smart guys love C class because they look really, really sexy on a spreadsheet. Okay. They're typically your kind of entry level apartment. Think of what you could have afforded when you just started in your career. Okay. Or what could I afford if my whole world collapsed, right? I went through a nasty divorce and Kassandra took all my money and I'm going to go back to Sportsman's Warehouse for, $11 an hour. I'm probably moving into a little tiny apartment, right? Okay. Most C class were intentionally built as a multifamily. I would strongly suggest you not buy. Yes, occasionally you'll find little C class single family homes. You're kind of getting the worst of both worlds when you do that. So in my opinion, those are a walk away. I'm not even gonna run numbers on something like that. Okay. Usually you're gonna see outdoor parking, 2 to 3 bedroom, 1 bath units, common, sometimes one bedrooms or studios, but those are a lot less common. And usually the tenants are only paying electric. That does make for a little bit more accounting on your part. It's higher risk if you got tenants leaving doors open, windows open in the winter, etc. Yeah, you're going to be paying higher heat bills, and there's a lot more of those human factors to deal with. Okay. These are usually going to be coin-op. One central place for tenants to do laundry. Some of them don't have laundry at all. I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you not go after the units that don't have any laundry at all. That is going to be a solid deal killer for the vast majority of people. Let's talk about pros of C class. They are hands down the cash flow kings. The vacancy, because you have more units typically in a C class, when you have one person gone in your fourplex, you are only 25% vacant. The cap rates tend to be really good on C class. There's a lot of residential loan programs still out there. If you are new to this world, your VA and your FHA loans can buy up to a fourplex, but you have to owner occupy for the first year. Last point on the pros, Alaska housing, Section 8 programs, Vancouver housing, if you're down in the Washington market, do not write that off. That can be an excellent way to stabilize a property and sort of insulate you against many of the C-class challenges, we'll call it. Okay, let's talk about the cons. Okay, yes, they are the cash flow kings. Yes, they have great cap rates. Yes, the engineers are just shaking in their seats right now. However, engineers, I love you boys. However, you are a little on the spectrum, and let's just say people skills are probably not your skills, or your strong points. There are a lot of human factors that you need to look at in C class. But Erik, I'll just rent to military. Okay, back in the day, for those of us who served, back in the day, yes, you would put the first sergeant and the commander's name on your application, and you would never pay deposit because that property manager knew that all she had to do was pick up the phone, call one of those two guys, They would grab you by the, you know, by the BDUs, drag you into the office, and things would get made right. That is not the case anymore. And if you want to argue that it is, I'm telling you that because I asked the first sergeant at my guard unit that exact question. Hey, can I find this guy's first sergeant because he really screwed over the homeowner? And he said, you got to sue him like anybody else. Those days are over. So if you don't believe me, call up someone who is currently working as a first sergeant and ask them. I have shown up to a showing at a C class in a rough neighborhood and seen a shopping cart in the yard. And then I've used that shopping cart to clean up the used diapers and tampons out of the yard before my showing. I guarantee you, you do not have a spot for that on your spreadsheet. When you try to get lease renewals out of a lot of C-class low-income tenants, you have about a 49% chance that they're going to renew because it does not take very long to move when you don't own a lot. Right now, I am not very impressed with the prices people are asking for C-class. Although typically, over the long run, generally speaking, they tend to be the best cash flow, the best cap rate relative to the purchase price. In economic downturns, your challenges, you may still be able to fill your units in C-class. However, your headache factor is going to go up dramatically. Your vacancy is going to go up dramatically. You're going to feel like you're just doing showing after showing after showing after showing after showing, and you can't get anybody who has a credit score or a credit history of actually paying their bills. So, do they never work? No, they work. Yes, they are very high cash flow. Yes, they are the kings of penciling out. But you really have to know what you're doing, and I'm talking like you have to know people to bail you out. Like it's really nice if you have relationships with the local Section 8 office. Okay, so overall, be prepared for the unexpected. Location still matters. Okay, again, I'm going to go back to the analogy of the guy who buys on a VA or an FHA loan and says, and says, well, gosh, I got to live there. I don't want my car broken into. So he makes a good decision and he buys in a good neighborhood. And then later on, he gets a little big for his britches and he buys in a less than desirable neighborhood and wonders why no one else wants to live there. Well, you didn't. Why do they? And the only people who do are people who don't have any other option. They're a good place to get your start. They are a good place to learn, that's for sure. You will definitely learn on C-class. They are very difficult to stay. There are good deals. I know a lot of the big syndication companies that will teach you how to do syndications, in my experience, they're going to teach you how to buy a C-class and make it a B-class. You cannot make a B-class in a C-class neighborhood. You cannot make a B-class in a C-class neighborhood. It will not happen. That cute little nurse who just wants to go to work and build her career and work her 12-hour shifts, I don't care how nice it is inside, she does not want to get stabbed in the parking lot. And trust me, she's thinking about that. Moving on. I'm a former airman. I'm going to pick on my soldier brothers here for just a little bit. You guys think you know everything. I love you guys, but you can't yell and demand your way through this. You have to have people who are there to help you, and you have to take their advice. So we're going to talk very specifically about who you want on your team. First thing, you want a mortgage broker. Notice how I didn't say bank, I said mortgage broker. A mortgage broker is able to sell you to banks. If you go to a bank, they will sell you the products that they have. Or you can go to a mortgage broker and he can sell you, shop you around to a bunch of banks and all their products. So I'll tell a story. I went to, we went to First Rate Financial. We were buying my duplex. Wells Fargo says, we'll take that deal. And they gave us the 90% letter. That means I'm 90% sure I will give you money. And then 4 days before closing, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, 4 days before closing on a house that was going to go into foreclosure if we didn't buy it, this little duplex I was buying, Wells Fargo said, well, at our corporate level, we've changed our financing guidelines on multifamily and you no longer qualify. Had I gone directly to Wells Fargo, I would have been hosed. The property probably would have gone into foreclosure. The entire process would have started, and it might be years until I even have the opportunity to buy that property again. But I went to a broker, and my broker, Adam, called me and said, it's fine. This is what happened. Don't call me, I'll call you. 24 hours later, we were back at the closing table with a tiny bank out of Jacksonville, Florida. That's the power a mortgage broker brings, okay? So not only are they going to shop you for better interest rates, better loan programs, they are masters in their craft, and they know, they have to know not just what their bank sells, but what everybody else's bank sells. They know their stuff, but they also, if things go wrong, they are your life jacket, okay? You want a real estate agent. You want a real estate agent who has had their license for more than 6 months, okay? Nothing against people who are starting, but if you're talking about big dollars in rental property, you need somebody who knows what they're doing. And I would ask around. Ask a good question is, did that agent ever tell you to not buy a property? Okay, there's lots of agents that will keep their lips zipped because it means a commission check for them. The really good agents who do a lot of deals and have ethics will tell you to not buy a property, will run honest numbers for you. So a real estate agent, okay, and just do not represent yourself, okay? Kassandra is a broker. I'm a licensee in Alaska. We both know what we're doing. When we bought our last home, we still used an agent because I know enough to know what I don't know. Okay, property manager. Yes, you can do this on your own. And oftentimes I encourage brand new investors to do it on their own. You honestly are a lot easier to deal with when you've managed yourself for a little bit. Because when you finally come talk to us and we say, hey, yes, we charge money to do our job, you kind of understand because you've been through it all at that point. The brand new investors who've never done it, I'm not saying we don't have clients like that, but they can be a little more challenging because to them, we are overhead. We are not a rental collection company. It's not like I just cash checks. There's a good property manager is stopping problems before they happen. A good real estate agent is stopping problems you never knew you had. Insurance agent, never, ever, ever lie to your insurance agent because the company that he or she works for would love to find out when you are having your worst day. If it's going to be a rental property, tell them it's going to be a rental property because they would love to find an excuse to not pay out $150,000 after that pipe break. You have to be honest with your insurance agent. Your tax accountant, congratulations, you just bought a rental property. You are now a small business owner. You need to do taxes like that, okay? Asset protection attorney, maybe not completely necessary on your first, but if you're serious about this and you start building up a portfolio of rental properties, you are going to want an asset protection attorney because you're going to start talking about LLCs and trusts and how to move money and how to not pierce the corporate veil and all that nerdy stuff that think of the asset protection attorney as the person who builds the castle wall around your gold. That's what the asset protection attorney is. Okay. Eviction or real estate attorney, they are different. I have eviction attorneys that we only send the quick and dirty, get in, get out, do the eviction. Here's all the paperwork. No, they didn't pay rent. Done. I have other real estate attorneys that we send the real nasty stuff to. The this is going to take a while stuff. And lastly, you want a contractor and a home inspector. Okay. but Eric, it's new construction. I don't need a home inspector. Go to timeout. Yes, you need a home inspector. 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 Maybe that guy who is installing the ducting for the exhaust fan over the gas range was having a fight with his girlfriend the night before, and he forgot to run it the rest of the way out to the roof and actually vent outside. We have seen that, where vents that are just dumping into the attic. You need a home inspector. That is some of the cheapest insurance, so to speak, you can get. Okay, so be humble, listen, ask around, talk to people, build a good power team, build good relationships. These are people who are you're going to work with. If you're planning on doing this seriously, you're going to work with them for years and years and years. Okay. Oh, but my sister-in-law is a real estate agent. She's so nice. Good for her. She should go sell lots of single-family homes and condos and kind of build up her experience, and then start dealing with complicated things like estoppel certificates and multifamily transactions. You need you need people who have a little bit of experience under their belt. Let's talk about some all too common mistakes that we see, because property managers, we find ourselves in positions where we're trying to fix things after the fact a lot. If we're doing our job, we're trying to stop problems way before they happen. That's what the lease is, right? We're going to talk about all this stupid before you do it, and you're going to sign a piece of paper that says you're not going to do any of this stupid. But sometimes we get properties that come to us where some stupid has already happened. Okay, over reliance on spreadsheets. Okay, again, my engineer buddies, you guys are smart. Absolutely run the numbers, but I need you to factor in that human beings are going to live in your place, and there are going to be factors beyond your ability to foresee them. Okay, these are not little economic units that you plug into slot A, slot B, slot C, slot D. They are people who lose their jobs, who break up with their girlfriends, who come off their meds, who, etc. There are human factors. So please don't over rely on a spreadsheet. And if you're going to, yes, you should still do a spreadsheet, 100%. Do a spreadsheet, but build margin in for the unexpected. Overpaying on purchase price. I don't care how good your property manager is. I cannot fix the fact that you paid too much. Only time can fix that. There is eventually, as inflation runs its course and rents rise, the price you paid will stay the same, and eventually that rising tide will catch up and you will find cash flow. But you cannot just yell at me and make rent prices go up. We work with sometimes these new homeowners who come to us and say, I need it rented by this day and I need it rented by this much. And you kind of think like, so you want me to promise the performance of someone else? I don't dictate the rent price. Guess what? You don't dictate the rent price. The market dictates the rent price. You don't get to walk into a gold dealer and say, what's the price of gold? $2,000 per ounce. That's not good enough. It needs to be $2,600. That's not how economics works. The rent price is going to be determined by the market. So no one cares what your mortgage is. I'm sorry, hard truth. No one cares. If I'm selling you my F-350, okay, I'm going to say, hey, it's a 2006. It was one of the worst diesels that Ford ever made. It's got a couple of problems. Here's what I fixed. And we go to KBB and it says it's worth, I don't know, $8,000. And I can't come to you and say, well, but see, I refinanced the car and I paid off all my credit cards and actually I owe 14 on it. You're going to go, I don't care. I will pay you $8,000 for this truck. Okay, guess what? Tenants don't care how much your mortgage is. Supply demand economics is going to determine what your rent price is. Not you, not me, the invisible hand of the market. Okay, undercapitalization. This is really easy for the noobs. Okay, anybody who got their start has done this, where they're like, What do you mean I have to replace the boiler? What do you mean that's $7 grand? Okay. Now, a good mortgage broker will make sure that you have some money in the coffers. Okay. But keep in mind, it for a long time now, I've seen people getting approved for way more loan than they should probably get into. Okay. So you need to have some capital set aside in case things go wrong, because some things may go wrong. I hope they don't go wrong for you. I hope that everything's awesome and all your tenants are perfect, but sometimes things are going to go wrong and you need to have some money set aside for that. Getting in a hurry to buy. Here's something I want you to like tattoo on the backside of your retina. Some buyers have to sell. No buyer has to buy. I got into an argument when I was brand new. Well, that'll give Willie something to edit out when we make the YouTube video. Remember, you don't have to buy a property. But I've met plenty of sellers that had to sell. Okay, so just do not get in a hurry to buy a property. There was a guy that used to have an AM radio station way back in the day, and he had this great phrase that always stuck with me. He said, "You're allowed to fall in love with a property only after you've bought it, but until then, be very careful of talking yourself into a property." Okay. Just talked about this. Don't talk yourself into a bad property. Every time you're about to buy a property, I want you to do an exercise where you imagine you were your friend trying to talk yourself out of it. It's a good way to remain objective and say, well, what is it bad about this property that why shouldn't I buy it? Right? It's a good intellectual exercise to do. Lastly, remember when I was talking about real estate agents and ethics, and ask somebody when they talk about their real estate agent that they absolutely love it. No, by the way, she's my sister-in-law. Ask them for a time when did that agent ever try to talk you out of buying a property? Because if they can't come up with the time, that should be a red flag to you. Okay. You got to remember that real estate agent stands to gain when you buy that property. An ethical real estate agent will understand that the longer term relationship with you to talk you out of a bad property, to save you from that bad decision, is worth more to them than that quick commission check. Okay. Getting in over your head, we talked about C-class a little bit. Can you learn the ropes on a C-class? Yes. Will you learn very quickly and probably the expensive way, and then probably about a year or two in, call a property manager and go, oh my God, what have I done? Save me from myself. And if your property manager is feeling generous, they might say, all right, come over here. Yeah, I'm going to need some money set aside for this because we're probably getting attorneys involved, right? That's a conversation that happens more than you'd think. We have had people come. It's very common right now to see older folks who have held on to properties for far too long. They sort of lost their edge. They're not going to the property as often. And then all of a sudden, they finally kind of come to the reality of things and go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to hand things off. And then the daughter calls us and we go out and look at it and go, oh my God, these are all heroin dens now. We've told them, hey, I need to see at least $20,000 up front because that's going to be in the drop in the bucket to get this thing back under control. Am I keeping that $20,000? No, that's not for me. That's for the attorneys and the contractors to get things back under control. So be careful getting in over your head. Okay, a little bit of baby steps is good. I know this makes all the internet bro guru types cringe, but yes, there is a learning curve. Let's talk about rent price forecasting. Okay, so we work with new homeowners all the time. Well, my neighbor's doctor's parakeet's chiropractor's dog rented his property for this much down the road. And my question back to them always, somewhat facetiously, is what was the person's credit score that they rented to? I tell homeowners all the time, I can rent your property for insane amounts of money. The real question is, will they pay it? I can have a piece of paper that says they owe you $3,200 a month. Will they actually pay it? That's the question. In big boy land, we have to make both of those decisions. So when you're shopping around for property, a couple things I want you to remember. You need to look as if you were a tenant and say, are there better deals out there? Well, I really want $1,500 for my unit. But if I were a tenant, could I find something similar or equivalent or maybe just slightly worse for enough money to make it worth it? So you need to get in the tenant's brain. If you have a friend that recently was shopping around for a place to live, that would be a great person to talk to because they're very unbiased. They were searching for themselves. Remember, when you're looking at prices on the internet, those are people that have not rented their property yet, because if they'd rented it, it wouldn't be on the market. So typically, like internally in the company, we have a list going back to 2012 of every property we've ever rented. How long did it take to get rented from the day it went on market to the day it leased? How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, etc. Right? Now we're typically looking, 6, 12 months back to gain rent prices, but we're not looking at what other people are asking, because I know a lot of people are asking just absolutely insane amounts of rent that they're never going to get. So why put bad data into the equation? I only want to see what was someone who passed a background check, who took the time to do a showing, applied, passed a background check, and then put up a deposit, signed a lease, paid rent. What were they willing to pay for a similar unit? That's what matters. I can put my truck on the market, to reuse that analogy. I can put my truck on the market for $85,000. Doesn't mean it's worth it. It's still an $8,000 2006, right? So humble yourself, young Padawan, when looking at rent prices. Never, ever, ever, ever take the seller's word for it on price. Here's a common trick, okay? If you want, if you're making a list of little aha moments from this is one of them. Sellers will rent to anyone with a pulse right before they sell the property, because the local drug dealer, who doesn't want a whole lot of questions asked and doesn't want to have to put his name or his social security down on any paperwork, will gladly pay you a dramatically higher rent price. He might even take care of the unit. He might even pay on time. But you might wake up one morning to find your property on the front page of the news. And now it's a crime scene, and crime scenes don't make money. So sellers will stuff their properties full of any tenant willing to sign a lease right before they sell it. So that's great that he's getting such and such for this unit and that unit. You need to go out and do your own homework and again, humble yourself when you look for that. Could this property still pencil out if rents go down? Okay. Don't overestimate rent prices. I have heard so many real estate agents say the same shtick to sellers. Oh, well, what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to put new paint, new carpet, and therefore rent will be this. Based on what, dude? You're still in a bad neighborhood. Oh, you have granite countertops and, occasionally get stabbed in the parking lot. But other than that, okay. No, paint, minor repairs do not blow up rent price. Again, be very humble when it comes to rent price. Don't talk yourself into it. Ask yourself, if rent prices went down, and I saw this firsthand, 2013 through 2015, there was a bunch of new construction in the Valley, and the builders were telling them, oh, rent 3, live for free, and we'll build you 4 single-family homes. You live in one, and you get to live for free, and you build all this equity. Yeah, until he built another 80 of those. Supply and demand. There's a lot more supply than there is demand. What happens? Price goes down. And there's a bunch of people who were saying, but my builder said it would rent for 16. And I'm going, yeah, and the market's 11 now. I want to rent your house for more money too. I make more money when I rent your property for more money. If your property manager is telling you we got to lower your price, he's taking a hit too. Kind of ties into the other stuff. Don't get market rents from people who are selling you something. Real estate agents, you guys are great. Some of you are incredibly talented. Some of you not so much. but most of you are really talented, good, ethical folks. Please stop quoting rent prices. Please, please stop quoting rent prices. I don't quote people what sales prices are going to be. You know why? Because I don't sell houses. I've rented 1,800 homes. I have a pretty good idea of what stuff's going to rent for. But I keep my mouth shut when people ask me how much is it going to sell for. You know why? Because I don't know. And I tell the people that I don't know. I don't sell houses. But hey, here's the phone number of somebody who would. Okay? Again, we beat this to death already. No one cares what your mortgage price is. I'm sorry. It's just a hard reality that you will have to deal with. And we talked about this. Okay? Location, location, location. Small upgrades do not raise the rent price. Let's talk about that. You've probably seen this at some point in your life. This is, and forgive me if I misquote, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When we're talking about location, that is way down in the hierarchy of needs. That falls into safety. You cannot stainless steel appliance and granite countertop your way out of a bad location. In fact, you're going to make it worse because now you've expended a bunch of capital that you could have used to buy a different property in a better neighborhood, but instead you're trying to overcompensate for the fact that you bought into a bad neighborhood. Remember how I was really foot stomping the whole B class thing? It's because there's always a middle class. People always want to live in a middle class. People aspire to live in a middle class neighborhood. People don't aspire to live in a bad neighborhood. They settle in living in a lower class neighborhood. That has economic effects on price. So when people start getting options to live elsewhere, they will. That's why the retention rate is only about 49% after 1 year. When you're looking at buying and you get that spreadsheet and you get all the numbers and you get all the this, and I've had this tenant for 7 years and she's been great, and sure, you can look at her rental unit. Don't show them the unit where the guy's doing meth. Okay, when you're getting all that and you're trying to buy, you need to factor location into the purchase price. And again, because we're all adults here, we didn't fall in love with a property before we bought it. If yes, can you buy in bad neighborhoods and still make money? Yes. Is it master's level? Yes. Should the purchase price reflect the neighborhood? 100%. There's a duplex I used to manage, just passed on buying it. You know why? Because I've tried to release that thing a bunch of times. And I got really sick of tenants driving off after they drove through like the third world to get to this really cute duplex. Nobody cared that the duplex was really cute and had great paint and this and this and this and this if it feels like I'm driving through Somalia to get there. You want stable locations. What have been neighborhoods that have been consistently middle class and stable for a long time? This can include looking at investing in other states. Okay, you don't have to buy in the state you live in. Maybe economic conditions aren't great where you live. You can buy in other locations. It'd be nice if you got an airline and flew there and went and took a look at it. But there are certain areas, Oklahoma City, for example. I own rental property in Oklahoma City. 2 reasons. I was stationed there for quite a while. I know it. I know the good neighborhoods. I know the bad neighborhoods. Second reason, Oklahoma City is one of the most stable cities economically in the United States. Am I going to absolutely kill it on appreciation and equity? No, but they consistently cash flow and the purchase prices are low and they're low risk because Oklahoma City just keeps chugging along. Okay, rules of thumb. Each rental property is a small business. Treat it like it. That's why you need a tax accountant. Take your time, like we talked about. Buyers never have to buy. Some sellers have to sell. That is leverage on your part. I didn't even have a license, and we were buying our duplex. So I was still kind of a newbie. And Kassandra had gotten into selling, but she was still new, so we were like, okay, we're going to still use an agent. And that duplex that was about to go into foreclosure, and we had this broker. He was just a hack, and he said, I said, well, I think we should offer such and such price. And he said, well, Erik, you don't want to offend the seller. And I said back to him, I said, I don't care about offending her with a written document. I'm not questioning her heritage. I'm simply offering her a price. I don't have to buy. She has to sell. I am in the position to help her out with that. She doesn't have to accept my offer. Okay. So if the price doesn't work, move on. Move on. You will lose so much money on a bad rental property. I've seen someone losing $20,000 a month on one property in Eagle River. It's on N Street. You can lose a lot of money very fast buying the wrong property. Location matters. This is why I've talked about 85 times. Okay? It is the number one determinant of rent price. That's why the old saying goes, location, location, location. Okay? This is another one of those, if you're only paying attention every so often, you're cooking dinner, you're doing whatever, you're listening to this on a YouTube video, you're driving, whatever. I want something, if you leave this talk with one thing stuck in your head, I want you to remember this. Never buy a rental property you wouldn't let your teenage daughter live in. You know that story of how we always run into these guys who they bought on a VA or an FHA loan and they made really good decisions on the first rental property? Why? Because they had to live there. And they looked at it from the perspective of, do I want to live here? Guess what? Your tenants are going to ask themselves the same thing. Do I want to live here? So a good way to kind of trick your brain is say, what if I had an 18 or 19-year-old daughter and she was moving out and she said, Mom, Dad, I want to live here. How would you feel about that? If you get an icky feeling in your stomach, then that's probably not a good property to buy. A couple of pro tips. Beware of gurus and snake oil salesmen. I've taken a lot of classes. I've done all that stuff. I've spent way too much money on that kind of stuff. Can you learn a lot? Like I said, can you learn a lot on the internet? Yes. Remember, does that guru live in your state? I've taken classes where we had this advisor and he flew up here to work with us. Well, what you need to do is you need to buy mobile homes and rehab mobile homes. And we spent 3 days looking for one mobile home that might be worth buying. You know what he didn't factor in? He lives in Nebraska and I live in Alaska. Those are very different. And there were no nice mobile home areas where, you could find a otherwise good retirement community that happened to be mobile homes and you could rehab them and make a lot of money. Okay? Remember, yes, it might be good advice. It might be good advice in Boston. It might be good advice in California. Is it good advice here? Maybe. I don't know. But get rich quick is, if any version of get rich quick is probably wrong. It's probably snake oil. Okay? Can you buy properties on no or low down? Yes. Have I done it? Yes, a bunch of times. I've used my VA multiple times. I've used FHA multiple times. I've used, first-time homebuyer programs, all that stuff. All legally, no problem. Does it have consequences? Yeah, because I didn't put any money down. And that's going to affect your cash flow. And if you're younger and you're trying to kind of build up a portfolio, you don't need cash flow right now. You're just starting your career. So chill out, make the money on equity and appreciation, tax benefits down the road, and you'll be fine. Give it time. It'll start making money, and then hold it. Now, if you're later in life and it's like, hey, I got to start planning for retirement, that's fine. But low or no money down is probably off the table. You're going to have to come up with some cash. And what putting down some cash is going to do is it's going to make cash flow happen. Because now there's a difference between the mortgage and what your rents are. Okay. But again, we're not chasing unicorns here. We're chasing reality. And reality is there's going to be consequences to each decision. Doesn't mean that one is wrong or right. It may just depend on your situation. Okay. Yes, at some point you need to start actually making money on a property. In my opinion, I don't think you should buy stuff just for the tax benefits. If you're just some insane, crazy high income earner, surgeon, astronaut, Navy SEAL, then, maybe it makes sense to buy something that loses money. But for most of us mere mortals, you need to make money. Factor human beings into the equation. Yes, all your like bigger pockets, Excel sheets and all that stuff are good. That's a really good step. And yes, you should do that. And I do that on every rental property I buy as well. But I also factor a lot of unexpected human craziness into those numbers, and I factor that in. I need to see really good numbers to overcome my fear that bad things might happen to good people. All right, so you made money. You bought a fourplex on a VA or FHA, and you owned it for a few years. You built up some equity. You built up some appreciation. You sell it. You buy your next place with some of the. Now you were able to put some money down, and you live in there for a couple years, and then you move on to the next one, and lo and behold, that duplex you owned is starting to make money. Okay, well, now what? All right, I'm making money. Well, if you were, say, later in life and you're trying to build a retirement plan, great, congratulations. Like you won. You won the game. Now, you can go out if you're younger and it's like, okay, I want to keep building my empire, buy more. Right? Start getting into the master's level stuff. Now that you've built that power team, hey, I've got a mortgage broker. Man, he saved my butt at that closing. Oh my gosh. And that real estate agent, man, she was just absolutely killer. And we looked at so many properties, but she was really patient with me and we walked on a bunch of them, but man, we finally found some good ones and we bought those properties and right. You're kind of like getting the hang of it. You've got a good relationship with your property manager. You understand what the property manager can control and what they can't. You're not screaming at them on the phone, right? Blaming them for, macroeconomics existing, right? Start buying. You can also scale up and diversify into different types of properties, right? Common one I hear people talk about is, man, I want to buy storage units. You and me too, brother. Like, yeah. So, you can start a business. That's what we did. We were like, hey, kind of learning the ropes. I think I might get into property management, right? Or maybe your cash flow from your rental properties is supporting some of your lifestyle, and now you can quit your job and start that business you've always dreamed of. Okay. You can invest in other businesses. You can also get into syndication. So once you've been on the ground and you know what you're doing at a rental property, syndication is where you're investing in rental properties with a bunch of other people. And that's really interesting to learn. Kassandra's invested in one. We're currently managing a syndication property up here in Alaska. That's pretty interesting. And you will be way, way, way ahead of your peers if you even have just a little bit of experience owning your own rental properties. Because when somebody's pitching a rental property, you're going to be able to smell some of the BS if they're pitching it at you. All right. So talk went a little bit long, but I hope it was educational. Thank you all for listening. If you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and throw questions in there. If you just come across this, check out the Landlord's Almanac. You can see that on the screen right now. Great place. We police that very carefully so that it's other landlords like you. It's not a bunch of people pitching at you. You'll notice that at no point in this presentation did I ask you to hire me. Did I pitch you anything? I didn't ask for money. I didn't try to sell you follow-on classes. We do this as part of helping the community, helping build other landlords, and we know what it's like to be that new guy starting out. So if you got friends looking into it, be sure to share these videos, share the Landlord's Almanac, because the more of us out there asking good questions, learning together, the better. So with that, I will wrap things up. Thank you all for watching.